Gold streaks painted the walls of the Duggar estate, as the morning sun slowly made its way through the tall windows. Pancakes cooking in the kitchen and the subtle scent of fresh flowers filled the air. As they went from room to room, their bare feet tapping lightly on the polished wooden floors, children's laughter reverberated through the hallways. The house appeared to be alive, pulsing with the vitality of the family that lived there, a tribute to years of love and labor. Michelle Duggar placed a vase of just-picked flowers on the dining table, while moving elegantly around the kitchen. Every petal was counted and every bloom was positioned with care. She hummed a tune, a lovely melody that blended with her children's distant laughter. Though there was a subtle strain behind her eyes, her face exuded warmth. She aspired to make every morning ideal for her family. "Breakfast is ready, girls," Michelle called from the other side of the house, her voice ringing with joy. Jana and Jinger walked down from the stairway, teasing one another and brushing their hair. The younger kids trailed behind them, hurrying by in a flurry of color and movement, each one holding a tiny object. One a doll, another a plate of breadcrumbs, and still another a tiny, cherished toy. Jim Bob came into the kitchen with a hot cup of coffee in his hand, his face softening as he absorbed the scene. With a pleasant smile, he added to Michelle, "Looks like another beautiful day with all of you here." There was orderly anarchy at the breakfast table. The children engaged in light-hearted arguments over who would seat next to each other as plates clattered and syrup dripped. Nevertheless, there was love, laughing, and the subliminal knowledge that they belonged together in spite of the chaos and noise. "Use the syrup with caution." As she nudged one of the younger girls who was attempting to sprinkle it artistically over her waffles, Michelle issued a warning. "A sticky mess is not what we want to happen again." "Mom, I can manage." The young girl grinned and said, "I'm sure I can do this," but she immediately spilled half of it on the table. Jim Bob shook his head and laughed. "You'll tidy up later, don't you?" he teased, causing the group to giggle. The morning was as typical as it could be in a home with 19 kids. Every child had their own energy, personality, and eccentricities. However, love, their parents' unwavering presence, and the underlying connection that only a huge family could have bound them together. Michelle gazed at them, her eyes softening. Jim Bob, who had stepped forward to stand behind her, heard her mumble, "I don't know what I would do without all of you." Jim Bob encircled her shoulder with an arm. He kissed her temple tenderly and added, "And you'll never have to find out." They took a time to observe their kids, giving themselves a rare break from the daily grind, and basking in the basic joy of the home. The aroma of pancakes, the gentle hum of conversation, and the warmth of family love filled the kitchen. The world appeared to be at peace, birds were chirping, and the garden was glistening with dew. Peace, however, is brittle. Suddenly there was a quick, loud explosion coming from the kitchen. It was a startling sound that sliced like a knife through the silence. First thin and gray, then thicker, heavier, and undeniably worrisome, smoke started curling along the ceiling. The kids' eyes widened in terror as they froze. "Mom! Dad! Smoke!" Jana yelled and furiously gestured in the direction of the source. When they smelled something chemical and burning wood, panic spread through the room. When Jim Bob noticed that the flames were starting to lick the kitchen cabinet's edges, his eyes widened. His hands trembling a little, he reached for the closest fire extinguisher. "Everyone go out. Right now." Michelle felt her heart racing. She gathered the youngest kids and held them in her arms. "No, no, not our home," she whimpered, tears running down her cheeks. The kids screamed and sobbed as they held on to her. As the smoke thickened, breathing became difficult. Precious furniture, family antiques, photos, and walls adorned with memories were all consumed by the fire, which spread with alarming speed. The once beautiful mansion was rapidly turning into a towering inferno by the time the neighbors came, drawn by the disturbance. Firefighters sprang into action as fire trucks pulled up with shrieking sirens and hoses uncoiling. Suffocating intensity filled the air as the bitter smell of melted furniture blended with the smell of smoke and burning wood. With a desperate tone, Jim Bob begged the fire chief, "Please save it. It means the world to us." The chief sadly replied, looking around at the growing fire, "We'll do our best, sir, but it's spreading fast." Michelle sobbed furiously as she fell onto the grass. Children tried to console her by putting their arms around her, but the destruction was too great for even their warmth and presence to lessen. It seemed as though their past, memories, and lives were being torn apart by each flame consuming the mansion. Nearly everything in the home had been reduced to ash and debris by the time the fire was ultimately contained. The family stared at the charred remains in horrified silence. The furniture was destroyed, the walls were completely burned, and the photos and treasures they had treasured for decades were gone. Jim Bob's hands trembled as he held Michelle tight. He said, "We'll rebuild, somehow," but his own hesitancy was evident in the trembling in his voice. Staring at the remains of their home, Michelle brushed away her tears. "It is more than just a house. It is the reason we have been here. How can we possibly begin anew?" The family's unity was evident despite the children's fear and uncertainty as they clutched to their parents. Despite the devastation, a silent fortitude started to show. For a family like the Duggars, having each other was more important than losing a property. Jim Bob and Michelle stood hand in hand as the sun started to set behind the burned-out remnants of the mansion, creating sweeping shadows over the ruined yard. Their home had been destroyed by the fire, but the family remained intact. They discovered a sliver of optimism in the midst of tragedy, a resolve to get back up, rebuild, and carry on with their lives together, stronger than ever. It was quiet the morning following the fire. The Duggar home was a harsh reminder of what they had lost, a blackened skeleton of memories, but it no longer stood as a symbol of their lives as the sun rose over the neighborhood. Smoke from strewn debris continued to drift languidly into the sky. Wrapped in blankets, the family sat on an area of lawn, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Michelle's face was pale and exhausted as she held the younger children close. Her voice was shaking as she muttered, "We need to figure out where we're going to stay, at least for now." Jim Bob gazed at the remains while raking his hands over his hair. "I've already called a few friends to see if we can find temporary housing, so I know. However, rebuilding will require all of our resources." The elder kids picked through the rubble with care as they went among the ashes. They combed through the remains of their lives, each object serving as a bitter reminder. Books, melted toys, and photographs. "What about school, Mom and Dad?" one of the younger girls inquired in a little, unsure voice. Jim Bob tried to sound comforting as he said, "We'll figure it out, sweetheart." But his heart was hurting. "It's important that we're together right now." Soon later, the media showed up. At the boundary of their land, reporters and cameras showed there, asking questions and flashing lights. Nothing could have prepared the Duggars for this, even if they had always been in the spotlight. "Is everyone doing well?" one reporter yelled. Michelle took a step forward, embracing her kids. "We're surviving." Even though she was crying, she said in a stern voice, "That's all that matters right now. We appreciate your concern, but this is a private family moment," Jim Bob continued. "Give us some space, please." The family cuddled together as the reporters departed. Jana and Jinger held hands and whispered softly in an attempt to soothe their younger siblings. Sitting in quiet, Jim Bob and Michelle felt the burden of responsibility. Despite the pain in their own hearts, they had to be strong for their kids. They spent the following few days living in a modest makeshift house that their friends and neighbors had given them. Although it was little, it was secure and provided them with a starting point. They clung to the comfort of being together, even though every room served as a reminder of what they had lost. One evening, as she tucked in the smallest children, Michelle remarked, "We'll rebuild. It can be even better, but it won't be the same." Jim Bob gave a nod. "We'll create new experiences. This is merely a new phase of our existence. We define the house, not the other way around." Tension simmered despite their determination. Everyone was stressed out as the older kids quarreled about duties and obligations. Conflict arose over every choice, including what to save, what to throw away, and how to prioritize the reconstruction. Even Jana and Jinger, who made an effort to mediate, experienced exasperation at times. One evening, Jana stated firmly, "We can't do everything at once. We must go gradually. No one will benefit from fighting." Michelle nodded, appreciative of the help, but she was exhausted. In addition to managing domestic chores and soothing wailing children in a much smaller space than they were accustomed to, She spent late nights organizing, contacting contractors, and figuring out logistics. Jim Bob also put in a lot of work. He had meetings with city authorities, insurance agents, and builders. Each phone call served as a reminder of the massive undertaking that lay ahead. Nevertheless, they never wavered from the fact that they were a family and could overcome anything as a unit. They started removing the wreckage from their land over the course of several weeks, preserving what they could. In order to assist, neighbors sent food, blankets, and even little toys for the kids. The community came together to support and encourage them. One afternoon, Michelle watched her kids pick through the ashes with care, while standing amid the debris. She murmured to Jim Bob, "It's difficult, but it gives me strength to see them still laughing and hopeful." Jim Bob wrapped her in his arm. "We have experienced difficult times in the past. It's simply another test. Together, we'll emerge stronger." Finding a family photo that was partially burned but still intact, preserving a beloved toy, and even managing to prepare a meal in the small makeshift kitchen were all examples of the Duggars learning to appreciate the little things. Every accomplishment, no matter how small, was a step in the right direction. Plans for reconstruction were drafted by the end of the month. The new home would surpass the previous one in size, strength, and beauty. Their memories, tenacity, and unshakable friendship would all be carried by it. The Duggar family's togetherness, love, and religion maintained their compass throughout the destruction. Although they had lost their house, they had not lost one another. They found hope in that. Tension and hope coexisted in the weeks after the fire. The Duggars had started the laborious, gradual process of reconstructing their house. After moving in, construction workers cleared the area and laid the foundations. The noises of hammers, drills, and saws now blended with the once wild laughing of children. Michelle observed the workers discussing schedules and blueprints in the makeshift living room. She whispered, more to herself than to others, "It's going to be different but better." Jim Bob strode back and forth while holding a clipboard. He was handling neighborhood issues, insurance problems, and contractors. From the kind of flooring to the arrangement of family portraits on the walls, every little detail counted. He told Michelle, "We have to make sure this is done correctly. Don't take quick cuts. Nothing less than flawless." But there was pressure to be perfect. The older kids started to feel the stress of the interrupted schedule. Organizing rescued materials, coordinating with neighbors, and helping with small building activities were now part of the daily routine. Arguments started to happen frequently. "Why must I tidy the storage room every time?" One morning, one of the kids voiced a complaint. "We must prepare it since it is a component of the house." Michelle gave a forceful response. "Everyone plays a part. Together, we are in this." Even though they were unaware of the entire scope of the event, the smaller kids could feel the anxiety. Their features flickered with tears, frustration, and exhaustion. Reminding siblings that collaboration and patience were crucial, Jana and Jinger put in endless hours mediating disputes. The media, meantime, continued to be present at all times. Reporters would periodically set up cameras at the property's edge to ask questions regarding the reconstruction work. Although the Duggars were used to being watched, this level of monitoring was wearing them out. In one interview, Jim Bob stated, "We appreciate your interest, but rebuilding is a family affair. Please be considerate of our privacy. We are grateful for the support, but we are concentrating on our children, their safety, and rebuilding our home," Michelle continued. "That is the only thing that counts." Stress was increased by budgetary problems, material shortages, and construction delays. The family pored over schedules, plans, and invoices as they collaborated to solve difficulties, sometimes late into the night. Everyone felt the weight of exhaustion, yet none let despair set in. Little triumphs gleamed amid the mayhem. Rooms gradually took shape, salvaged objects were repaired, and laughter returned to the home. The kids learned that even in the midst of reconstruction, happiness could be found in the little things like a simple shared dinner, a board game in a makeshift living room, or a cherished book. But there were times when I wasn't sure. At night, Michelle would occasionally sit by herself and gaze at the walls of their makeshift house. She muttered to Jim Bob, "We've lost so much, but we still keep going. All I can hope for is that we can provide them with what they are due." Her hand was held by Jim Bob. "We will," he firmly stated. Although we have no control over the fire, we do have power over how we respond to it. Our family is the most important thing. Although there were some tears, frustrations, and setbacks along the process, the new house gradually started to take shape. Rooms started to promise a future full of memories to come as walls were raised and roofs were constructed. The Duggar family found something significant despite the growing difficulties. Strength was not derived from a home, belongings, or even ideal conditions. Resilience, solidarity, and love were the sources of strength. And they understood that no fire or calamity could ever destroy that as they looked up at the walls of their new home reaching toward the sky. The Duggar family's perseverance had finally paid off months after the fire. The new house, bigger, stronger, and brighter, rose proudly where the old one had burned. The freshly painted rooms smelt of hope. The garden was carefully planted and promised a future full of growth and life, and its walls glittered in the sunlight. As Michelle and her kids moved through the corridors, their laughter reverberated, but this time it came from a house that was based on love and resiliency. Every space offered fresh opportunities, and every nook offered a spot for unmade memories. "Look, Mom, I have a larger room now." With wide, excited eyes, one of the kids yelled. "Indeed." Michelle smiled and said, "And you may decorate it whatever you like." Seeing their happiness made her heart sing. This moment seemed like a victory, a reward for their perseverance after months of uncertainty and hardship. Jim Bob inspected the landscaping and finishing touches on the outside. Michelle joined him on the porch when he told her, "It's perfect. What matters is seeing them happy again, not just the house." They came to celebrate the new home with the community that had helped them through their worst moments. Outside, friends, neighbors, and even a few reporters gathered to grin and offer congratulations. Once perceived as intrusive, the media now chronicled a story of optimism and achievement. The family gathered inside for a modest dinner. Excitedly, the kids talked about their rooms, their toys, and the activities they would be playing. The individuals who lived there were what gave the house its warmth, not the walls or furnishings. With tears in her eyes, Michelle glanced around the table. "After everything we've been through, here we are. Together. More powerful." Jim Bob grasped her hand tightly as he reached over. "We can never be broken by fire, setbacks, or challenges. Despite losing our house, we have discovered our strength." To make sure everyone was comfortable in their new surroundings, the bigger kids assisted the younger ones with new routines. While the middle children ran errands, unpacked boxes, and arranged the family's possessions, Jana and Jinger giggled as they led the youngest child through their new bedroom. A quiet talk in a corner, a shared joke at breakfast, or a toddler finding a new favorite spot in the house. Even the tiniest moments felt significant. Each represented recovery, and moving on while keeping the past in mind. The family gathered in the living room as darkness fell. There were bare spots on the walls, but there was also the sound of love and laughing. Softly flickering candles created soft shadows. Jim Bob and Michelle sat together and watched their kids play. Michelle muttered, "We've rebuilt more than just a house. We've started over." "And our connection," Jim Bob continued, "more powerful than before." Above the Duggar mansion, the stars were bright outside. For the first time in months, the family was able to sleep soundly indoors, surrounded by the warmth, love, and security of home. Their past had been destroyed by the fire, but it had also given them the opportunity to grow stronger and closer together than ever. Hope had been reignited in the Duggar family's heart, and there were countless opportunities for fresh starts. The newly constructed house was bathed in golden light as the sun rose slowly over the Duggar estate. The smell of fresh paint, blossoming flowers, and damp soil from the newly planted garden filled the cool morning air. With a new home, a new chapter, and a fresh feeling of hope, the family had at last found their rhythm. Michelle watched her kids run by her as she stood in the doorway, their laughter reverberating throughout the home. While the elder kids argued over who would receive which bedroom, the youngest raced barefoot across the gleaming floors, giggling and holding a doll. Every sound served as a reminder that life went on sweetly in spite of its difficulties. Jim Bob smiled softly as he walked toward her. Putting an arm around her shoulders, he remarked, "It's incredible how far we've come. Even though we've lost everything, we've somehow gained even more." Michelle felt the weight of months of grief, rebuilding, and fear finally go away as she leaned into him. Greater than a house, she muttered. We've gained resilience, perspective, and the knowledge that, as long as we're together, we are unbreakable. Sensing that the storm had passed, the kids gathered in the living room. Photographs, a treasured toy, a family Bible, and other little items they had rescued from the previous house were arranged on shelves and tables. Every object conveyed a tale, a link to the past, and evidence of the life they were creating from scratch as well as the life that had existed. Jana gingerly turned a little, burnt picture frame in her hands. She said, "It's like even the fire couldn't take our memories. Together we remain here." Michelle said, "Yes," with tears in her eyes. "Neither our family nor our love or strength were taken. That's what really counts." To hold the youngest children in his arms, Jim Bob knelt down. "Do you notice this?" He spoke softly. "We deal with life together, no matter what occurs. Nothing can sever our relationship." Quietly, the family celebrated all day. They planted flowers, set up furniture, unpacked boxes, and told tales of the old house. Every memory welcomed the present while paying respect to the past. Richer and deeper than ever, laughter reverberated through the new walls. The family gathered in the large living room as darkness drew near. Warm shadows were formed by the delicate flickering of candles on shelves. Despite being brand new, the house immediately had a homey feel to it. Not because of the walls or furnishings, but because it was brimming with love, life, and a shared past. Michelle was the first to speak, her tone steady yet passionate. "We have practically been through fire, and here we are. More appreciative, smarter, and stronger than before. Let this house serve as a daily reminder of that." "This is more than just a house," Jim Bob added. "It is evidence of tenacity, faith, and the strength of family. When everything seems to be taken away by the world, keep in mind that what counts most is what we hold in our hearts." The kids nodded, knowing well than words could express. Even the youngest felt safe, warm, and loved, even if they were too little to understand all the complexities. When night fell, the sky was dotted with stars and painted in deep indigo hues. Standing together on the porch, the family observed the lovely glow of their new home's lights against the night. In a circle unbroken by loss, terror, or fire, they held hands. They had a deep realization at that very moment. A home is made of its occupants, not its walls or roof. They provide protection and a sense of belonging because of their love, tenacity, and solidarity. That would never be taken away by calamity. Jim Bob said to Michelle, "This house will stand, but our family will endure forever," as they gazed toward the horizon. "That is what we have left behind. Not just a house but also love, hope, and strength." Michelle grinned with joy. "And no matter what happens, we will always rise together." A sense of calm descended upon the scene as the camera gradually drew back, displaying the Duggar family silhouetted against the bright house, with parents grinning and children giggling. As though reiterating their unspoken pledge, the stars above glowed. That family, love, and life endure through all hardships, fires, and storms. The timeless message that home is carried inside the hearts of those who love one another and is not lost in ashes, remained visible as the screen went to black.